Tyler stood center stage under the blinding auditorium lights, his teeth gleaming whiter than the projection screen behind him. He raised a hand, silencing the applause that rippled through the quarterly review for Jameson Custom Millwork. 20%, he announced, his voice smooth, practiced. That's the revenue jump we're celebrating today. And it's just the beginning of the new era. I stood in the back, leaning against the wall, my arms crossed. Nobody looked at me. Nobody ever looked at the invisible support beams until the roof came down. A junior analyst raised his hand timidly. Sir, regarding the lumber sourcing for the new luxury line, how did we secure that vintage teak at such a low margin? The market rates are, Tyler laughed, cutting him off. It was a dismissive sound, sharp and hollow. Don't bore everyone with the sawdust details, kid. That's what the backroom staff is for. I handle the vision. The room chuckled obediently. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. Christina. Make sure Tyler looks good up there. Don't correct him. He needs this win. I looked up at my brother, basking in the credit for a deal I had spent 3 months negotiating. I looked down at my phone, and then, for the first time in 29 years, I didn't type back. I just turned around and walked out the door. Before we watch this house of cards collapse, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Jameson Custom Millwork wasn't just a business to my father, James, it was an altar to his own ego. The sprawling estate where we grew up smelled perpetually of sawdust and linseed oil, a scent that settled into my pores before I could even walk. But there was a strict hierarchy in that workshop. Tyler, my older brother by 14 months, was given the toy drafting table and the miniature hard hat. He was the heir, the visionary, the future face on the brochure. I was given the broom. For 29 years, that was the dynamic. Tyler stood in the light, pointing at blueprints he couldn't read, while I stood in the shadows, calculating the load-bearing requirements. It wasn't explicit abuse. My parents didn't lock me in a cupboard or starve me. It was something more insidious, a slow, quiet conditioning that I call the trap of normalized utility. You don't thank the support beams in the walls for holding up the roof. You just expect them to stay there, silent and strong, while you hang expensive art on the drywall. I accepted my role as the invisible structural integrity of this family because I was taught that holding them up was the only way I held value. Tyler was the facade, I was the framing. And you never see the framing until the house burns down. When my father died 3 years ago, the trust he left behind was a testament to his obsession with image. The business, valued at $2.5 million, went to Tyler naturally. But there was a catch, a stipulation my father's lawyer, Mr. Gary, called the Craftsman's Clause. To inherit full title, Tyler had to maintain the company's master builder certification and keep net profitability above 15% for 5 consecutive years. If he failed, the trust would dissolve and the assets would be liquidated or transferred to a qualified trustee. My father thought he was motivating his son to greatness. In reality, he was handing a loaded gun to a toddler. Tyler didn't know the difference between white oak and pine, let alone how to bid a commercial contract. The first month he took over, he nearly underbid a hotel renovation by $200,000. I caught it at midnight, rewriting the proposal while he was out celebrating. I kept doing it. I negotiated the lumber contract. I smoothed over the client dispute. I managed Gregory, our foreman of 30 years, who looked at me with sad, knowing eyes every time I handed him a corrected work order. I told myself I was protecting the employees. I told myself I was honoring the legacy. But I was lying. I wasn't protecting the legacy. I was enabling the parasite that was eating it. I was the one keeping Tyler profitable, which meant I was the one keeping the handcuffs on my own wrists. Tyler's office renovation was the first crack in the veneer. He tore down my father's drafting room, the place where the blueprints for the original Jameson line were hand-drawn, and replaced it with a lounge featuring an espresso bar and imported leather sofas. He called it the ideation hub. Gregory, the foreman who had worked for my father since he was 20, watched the demolition with a look of quiet devastation. "It's a pivot," Tyler explained to the team, pacing in his new $3,000 suit. "Custom millwork is dying. It's too slow, too expensive. We're launching the Jameson Lifestyle line, mass production, flat pack shipping. We outsource the manufacturing, slap our logo on it, and sell the heritage story." I stared at him. "You can't sell a heritage story if you fire the craftsman who built it," I said, my voice low. Tyler turned to me, his smile tight. "Victoria, you're too attached to the sawdust. We need to be lean. Speaking of which." He gestured to Gregory. "We're restructuring. Gregory, your role is redundant in the new model. We'll be letting you go effective immediately." The room went silent. Gregory didn't argue. He just nodded, took off his work cap, and walked out. That was the moment. The line wasn't just crossed, it was erased. Tyler wasn't just incompetent, he was dismantling the soul of the company to pay for his vanity. I didn't scream. I didn't beg him to reconsider. I walked calmly into my office and closed the door. Being a glass child, a sibling everyone looks through to see the shiny one had taught me how to move without being seen. I opened my computer and plugged in an external hard drive. I downloaded every design file I had created over the last 5 years. I exported my personal client contact list, the architects, the designers, the contractors who called me when they needed real answers. I deleted my custom pricing templates from the shared server, leaving only the generic, flawed spreadsheets Tyler had originally set up. Then I typed a resignation letter. 2 sentences. "I resign, effective immediately. The keys are on the desk." I walked out the back door carrying a single box. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't want to alert Tyler. I wanted him to wake up tomorrow and realize that the engine had vanished, leaving him sitting in a parked car he didn't know how to drive. As I drove away, I didn't look back at the Jameson sign. I was already visualizing the new one. I called Gregory the next morning. We met at a diner halfway between the estate and his small house in town. He looked older without his work clothes. Smaller. "Miss Victoria," he said, standing up when I approached. "It's just Victoria, Gregory. Please." We ordered coffee. I didn't waste time. "I'm starting my own firm," I said. V&G Architectural. Victoria and Gregory. I have the designs, the contacts, and the back-end infrastructure. You have the hands, the crew, and the respect of every supplier in the state. I want you as my partner. 50-50. Gregory stared at me, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth. "Partner?" he repeated. "Not foreman, partner. We don't take orders from people who can't read a bevel gauge. We build what we know is right." A slow smile spread across his face, erasing 10 years of weariness. "When do we start?" "Today," I said. We didn't steal clients. We didn't have to. I simply sent a subtle email to my personal contact list, the architects and contractors I'd been secretly managing for years, announcing my new venture. The response was immediate. Within 48 hours, we had 3 bid requests. They knew Tyler was the face, but they knew I was the brain. They followed the competence. Meanwhile, at Jameson Custom Millwork, the wheels were coming off. Tyler's lifestyle line was a disaster. The imported furniture was arriving damaged, the wood was warping, and the heritage branding felt cheap and inauthentic. Clients were furious. Refunds were being demanded. Tyler called me a week later. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I answered. "What?" "You have to come back," he shouted, panic fraying the edges of his voice. "The Buchanan account is threatening to sue. They say the cabinetry is garbage. You need to fix this. Mom is crying, Victoria. She says you're abandoning the family legacy." I felt a cold, calm wash over me. "I'm not abandoning the legacy, Tyler," I said. "I'm letting you own yours." I hung up. Silence was the loudest sound I could make. 3 months later, I was sitting in my office reviewing the blueprints for a new custom library commission when Mr. Gary walked in. He looked tired. "Miss Victoria," he said, closing the door behind him, "we have a problem. Or rather, Tyler does." He laid a file on my desk. I ordered an emergency audit of the Jameson accounts. The company is hemorrhaging cash, but the numbers didn't add up. The expenses were too high for the volume of work. I opened the file, and I found the missing variable, he said. The vintage lumber reserve. The sprawling warehouse of old-growth mahogany and quarter-sawn oak that your father spent 40 years collecting. It's gone. I froze. That reserve was the company's retirement fund, its insurance policy, its heart. It was worth nearly $1 million. He sold it? I whispered. He liquidated it, Mr. Gary corrected. 6 months ago. To a bulk exporter for pennies on the dollar. He used the cash to pay for the office renovation, the branding consultants, and his own salary. He paused, looking at me gravely. "Victoria, the trust has a strict asset preservation clause. Selling core assets without board approval is a breach of fiduciary duty. It's embezzlement." The room went cold. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was theft. Tyler had stolen our father's life work and sold it for scrap to buy leather sofas. "What does this mean for the clause?" I asked. "It means the 5-year window is irrelevant," Mr. Gary said. "He violated the trust immediately. The ownership reverts to the contingent beneficiary effective today. But Victoria," he hesitated, "there's nothing left. The accounts are empty. The inventory is gone. You're inheriting a corpse." I looked at the file, then out the window at the city skyline. "Not a corpse," I said. "A plan forming in my mind, sharp and clear, a shell, and I know exactly how to fill it." 2 hours later, Tyler stormed into the old showroom. It was a cavernous space, dusty and echoing, filled with the ghosts of unfinished projects. My mother, Christina, was with him, clutching her purse like a shield. Tyler looked manic, his tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead. "You can't do this!" he shouted, his voice bouncing off the concrete walls. "This is my company. My name is on the sign." I stood behind a folding table I had set up in the center of the room. Mr. Gary stood beside me, silent and imposing. "Actually," I said, my voice calm, "your name was on the trust. And you broke the trust." "It's a technicality," Tyler screamed. "I was pivoting. I was saving the brand." He slammed his hand on the table. "You think you can run this? You spent 10 years sweeping floors, Victoria. You don't know the first thing about leadership." "I know that leadership isn't selling the foundation to buy a new coat of paint," I replied. "I know that you don't fire the people who actually know how to build things." My mother stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Victoria, please, he's your brother. He made a mistake. We can fix this. Just sign a waiver, give him another chance, for the family." "For the family?" I repeated. Where was the family when I was rewriting his proposals at 2 a.m? Where was the family when I was managing the clients he ignored? You didn't care about the family then. You cared about the image. I looked at Tyler. "I'm not signing anything. The transfer is legal. The company is mine." Tyler sneered. "Fine. Take the company. It's bankrupt anyway. But you don't own the brand. Jameson is my middle name. I'll sue you for trademark infringement if you use it." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "I don't want the name, Tyler. You can keep it. It's worthless now anyway. The clients know who did the work. They don't care about the label, they care about the product." I paused, then delivered the final blow. "Oh, and about the building. I bought the mortgage note last week through my LLC. The bank was happy to offload a distressed asset, so, technically, you're trespassing on my property. I'm evicting Jameson Custom Millwork effective immediately. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." Tyler stared at me, his mouth open, the color draining from his face. He realized then that his power had always been rented, borrowed from my father, sustained by my work. He had nothing of his own. I had built my power from scratch, in the dark, and now it was the only thing standing. The next morning, I stood outside the newly renovated workshop. The sign above the door was simple, hand-painted in gold leaf on reclaimed oak, V and G millwork. The air smelled of freshly cut cedar and honest work. Inside, Gregory was already instructing a new apprentice, his hands guiding the young man's grip on a hand plane. The sound of the blade shaving wood, shh, shh, was the only music we needed. Tyler was gone. The lawsuits were piling up, the bankruptcy proceedings were messy, and the Jameson name had been dissolved into a cautionary tale in the local business journals. My parents had tried to call, tried to guilt trip, tried to bargain, but I had blocked their numbers. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had the respect of my team, the loyalty of my clients, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had built something real. I walked into the shop, running my hand along a stack of rough-sawn walnut. It was heavy, solid, unpretentious, just like the life I had carved out for myself. I wasn't the invisible support beam anymore. I was the architect. And for the first time in 30 years, the structure was sound. If you've ever had to build your own worth from scratch while everyone else watched, share this story. You're the architect now.